Alright, so the author I picked was a Rudyard Kipling. His full name was Joseph Rudyard Kipling. He was a British person. His parents were both fully British. He was born in India in Mumbai. Um, this is a photo of him. This is actually a pretty well-known photo of him. This is when he just released a lot of his well-known books. So this is his parents. His mother's name was Alice Kipling. Her maiden name was Nee MacDonald. His father's name was John Lockwood Kipling. And he was born in December 30th, 1865 in Bombay, India, which was still under British rule. And he died in January 18th, 1936. He was 7 years old in London, England. And this is he was very, very British. He did a lot of traditional British values and traditions. This is pretty much like a generalization of how India was under the British rule, both militarily and culturally. And this is a photo of actually Mumbai just a little bit after he was born, so you can see the architecture pretty well, and you can see how they're pretty well civilized and developed technologically because they were under the British rule, so they had a lot of the influence from them. This is the British flag that was from 1858 to 1947. That's pretty obvious how the British flag is over the sigil of India, which because that stands for the British literally ruled over India at the time. This is another picture of Mumbai, India, where Kipling was born. This picture was taken the same year he was born. You can see it's not super developed on this part. It's still kind of wild. Kind of has a Jungle Book feel. Um, and so I was researching him. I found out that it was pretty common to be sent away to a boarding school at a really young age. And so when he was 5 years old and his sister was 3, they were sent away to a boarding school in Southsea, Portsmouth, UK. And when he was 13 years old, he was sent to the United Services College, and they prepare boys to go into the military service. And he went from there, and from he was 13 till he was 17 when he graduated. These are both photos of the schools. It was pretty big because it was a boarding house, so they had to have, the housing, kitchen, all that, place to do laundry, exercise, enough to be able to live and teach. And then he used the experiences from the school to write the book Stalking Co. And so after he graduated, he went back to India, and he worked at 2 different newspapers. And I tried to find pictures of the town to see how big it was, how developed it was, but I couldn't find any. But they had several newspapers, so it must have been pretty well developed. And so while he was there working under the newspapers, he wrote 6 collections of short stories: The Soldier's Three, The Phantom of, not the Phantom, but the story of the Gadsbys in black and white, and Under the Deodars, The Phantom Rickshaw, and Wee Willie Winkie, which is probably the most common and popular out of all these short stories. And so he sold these short stories to the newspaper, and he made 250, I think it's like francs or pounds. I think it was pounds. And so using this money, he made his way to London because that was the literary center of the world at the time. That's kind of opinion based, but whatever. And so a little bit after that happened, after he went to London, he actually went to San Francisco and he toured the west coast of the United States. These are some photos of San Francisco at the time, so it definitely is not what it looks like today. So after he had toured the west coast, he returned to London where he lived for 2 years, where he met an American publishing agent named Wolcott Balestier. They actually collaborated on a book. So a little bit after, he ended up finding out that his agent had died. And so he ended up sending a telegram to his agent's sister, Carolyn Starr Balestier, and he proposed to her and they got married. And so they got married during the middle of an influenza epidemic. So there's a lot of funerals being held. And so when they took a honeymoon, they went to their family estate in Vermont, and then in Japan. But when they got to Japan, they found out that their bank had failed. So they had to go back to the United States because they didn't want to go back to the UK just yet. So when they got there, they had conceived, and so she got pregnant, and they decided to rent a small cottage near where her family was in Vermont. And it was only $10 a month. I don't know how much that was to them. Might have been a lot, might have been nothing. And this is a photo of what it looks like now. It's pretty